On behalf of everyone here at Globally Procure, I'd like to extend you all a big thank you and welcome for joining us on this webinar today. We hope you find the material around managing non-strategic spend to be worthwhile. We have worked in this area for a number of years and have some experienced individuals to present with you today. Without further ado, I'd actually like to introduce our main speaker to you today, Abhishek Pandey, who is a vice president at our company and actually manages a number of our large-scale procurement transformation programs. He's worked in a number of industries, including CPG, pharma, and the industrial products space. He's also worked globally in this area. And it includes things like procurement organizational restructuring, strategic sourcing, and procurement outsourcing. Prior to joining Globally Procure, Abhishek worked with Capgemini, Ernst & Young, and also PricewaterhouseCoopers. Abhishek earned his MBA degree from the Wake Forest University and has an engineering degree from a school in India. He also holds a CPIM certification from Apex. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to Abhishek and let him start speaking to you directly on managing non-strategic spend. Abhishek, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tom. And good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, wherever you are. Thank you for joining today. The topic for today's discussion, if you didn't know that already, is effective management of non-strategic spend. I've spent years and years working with Gap and other companies and working with our clients, managing their non-strategic spend effectively, and I would like to share some of my insights in this area, what we have seen in the past and what the key trends in this area are. So over the next 35 to 40 minutes, we'll try to, as a first step, try to define what non-strategic spend means. And then we'll move on to what are the benefits of strategically addressing the non-strategic spend and how to handle that spend to achieve the benefits that so many in the industry are achieving today. And as Rachel mentioned, there is a screen on your right for the chat window. You feel free to send in your questions. There will be a separate Q&A session towards the end of this presentation. I will try to respond to as many questions as I can, but feel free to send in your questions as and when they come up. So what is non-strategic spend? The definition probably varies from company to company, from CPO to CPO, from buyer to buyer. At a very high level, non-strategic spend is something that you do not have good control over because of either lack of resources, lack of expertise internally, or lack of visibility into the spend. The lack of resources or expertise could be because of the high costs for hiring and retaining such talent, and there may be other priorities within the procurement group that the CPOs or the other people within the procurement organization would rather focus on, which has higher ROI for the company. Over the past few years, working with our clients and dealing with a lot of procurement organizations, we have sort of seen three different definitions for non-strategic spend. Most of you would be familiar with the classification between direct and indirect, so I will not go into that. But non-strategic spend, typically a lot of companies feel a portion of the indirect spend is non-strategic. There's a definition B as well. Some companies out there in the market feel everything indirect is non-strategic while direct is strategic. And there's a third definition, C, that is floating around as well, which is everything indirect, and then some tail end of direct where the companies don't have enough resources or there's just too many items and supplies to manage which haven't been managed effectively in the past. So that's the sort of the tail end of the direct spend. And non-strategic spend is nothing but all of indirect plus that tail end direct for a lot of companies. And typically over the years what we have seen is the definition has been changing. It's not a static definition for non-strategic spend. Starting from definition A, moving on to definition C, and a lot of companies have seen significant benefits just trying to define what non-strategic spend is and just assigning the right resources and the right people to strategically address that spend. Now, most of the CPOs have, especially the leading edge CPOs, have started to look well beyond the definition C of non-strategic spend. In fact, they have just stopped talking about the non-strategic spend anymore. And the new way of classifying spend that is gaining ground today is just a classification of high touch and low touch spend. What are these two kind of spend buckets? So high touch spend is nothing but that directly impacts the company's products or performance, multiple stakeholders involved, procurement, quality, legal, marketing, etc. And 3, a small, very demanding supplier base where the switching costs may be too high, or they have, so sort of the suppliers have more power than the buyers. So if all those 3 conditions are true, then the procurement organizations today are classifying it as high touch spend. And what's low touch spend? Everything that's not high touch is low touch. So where no direct impact on the products, fewer stakeholders involved, vast pool of suppliers, the switching cost not too high. So all of the spend that sort of falls within those buckets is classified as low-touch spend. And again, there are different ways of handling the high-touch and low-touch spend, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on further slides below. But there are obvious benefits to strategically think about the non-strategic spend. A lot of companies, and we have worked with a lot of companies in the past as well, who have realized 7 to 15% on their non-strategic spend, that's directly impacting their bottom line or their EPS if they're a publicly traded company. In fact, what we have started to do is for a lot of publicly traded companies, whenever we go in, we have a savings target estimate, and we sort of translate that into EPS. So if we save a company, let's say $60 million over 1 year, then their EPS would go up by, let's say, 10 pennies. So one of the projects that we just launched very recently, we christened it as Project 10 Pennies. A very effective way of communicating to various stakeholders what impact the procurement organization can bring on the bottom line and on the shareholder value. The savings have come from multiple parameters, and again, a lot of it is because it was considered non-strategic, because there were not enough resources to handle that spend. The emphasis wasn't there, and once the companies did decide to go after that spend strategically, the key savings drivers were sort of the increased spend visibility as a first step that creates the right decision-making framework, which would then lead to lower costs of goods because of strategic sourcing, something that hadn't been managed that effectively in the past. Reduced operational costs because of labor arbitrage savings, increased compliance, market and supplier intelligence that feeds the right inputs into the sourcing process, and reduced sourcing cycle times because someone is strategically looking at the spend that has traditionally been ignored in the past. So significant benefits of looking to attack the non-strategic spend in a way that sort of being driven by the fact that there is enough competition in this marketplace. The shareholders are asking for more and more value out of the company, and procurement organization sort of steps up to the plate and delivers that value. I'll just very quickly go into the management aspect of the spend. And again, most of you would be pretty familiar with the three key components: a detailed spend analysis, which will provide timely and accurate spend visibility to the right stakeholders. You can't do much with any spend if you do not have visibility into who is spending what, with who, and where. So the consolidation opportunities may be across business units or geographies, and that's where the spend analysis comes in and provides that visibility to all the stakeholders across geographies and business units and identify the right opportunities to go after. And after getting the visibility and the right framework for the spend, the next obvious step is the strategic sourcing. Now, the strategic sourcing brings the right processes, the right industry knowledge, and the right supplier base to achieve best-in-class pricing, best-in-class suppliers and contracts with the right T's and C's and SLAs and continuous improvement programs. A lot of companies have managed this pretty effectively on the direct side, where it has a bigger impact, but similar savings and similar benefits can be achieved on the non-strategic spend as well, just going through this process diligently, making an investment, whether it's one-time investment or as an ongoing investment. So after strategic sourcing comes the piece of category and transactions management. So strategic sourcing will, what it will do is just put the right suppliers in place, put the right contracts in place, but it is crucial to manage the contracts, manage the buying process for compliance, for managing the suppliers for their performance. In true sense of the word, it is mostly tactical work, but it still requires strategic inputs from time to time to address the changing market conditions or changing demand patterns, and just staying on top of those key parameters to provide the best value to an organization. So based on these key steps, a lot of CPOs today are devising strategies on managing their entire spend. And I'll go back to the high-touch and low-touch definitions of spend. As I had said earlier, the definition is moving away from strategic versus non-strategic, direct versus indirect, tail versus non-tail, or core versus non-core. The new way of looking at things is just the high-touch and the low-touch categories, and there are obviously different ways to handle these two different spend areas. So this particular slide sort of shows a 2x2 matrix for internal structure of how and what should the procurement organizations do to achieve that best-in-class status for their entire spend. So just focusing on the high-touch categories for now, definitely there are a lot of stakeholders involved in this. There's a direct and big impact on the company's performance with these categories. So it does make sense for some internal expertise and resources to manage the strategic and the tactical workload, just to ensure that the stakeholders are happy, just to ensure that it does have a meaningful impact on your overall company's performance. However, for the low-touch spend, we have found that there is no strong business case for keeping any internal expertise or resources, as some outside firms can definitely do a better job on this just because they have the economies of scale and they can afford to invest to stay on top of market through market intelligence activities and understanding what the current supplier base is. Just doing all of this internally adds a lot of additional overhead to a company's procurement organization. And so this 2x2 matrix, high-touch categories and low-touch categories on the y-axis, and strategic sourcing and the category plus transactions management, which is mostly tactical work, on the x-axis, clearly sort of shows strategic sourcing front. You do need to maintain internal expertise for the high-touch categories, build those relationships with the key stakeholders, build those relationships with the key important suppliers that you have. But for the low-touch categories, you do not need to invest in supplier relationships or just staying on top of the current market trends. And there are fewer stakeholders to manage as well. And for the category transactions management, again, for the high-touch categories, you would want to keep some control on it, just because it is because of its sensitive nature and because of the stakeholder involvement. But for the low-touch categories, again, we have not found any strong business case for keeping an internal control on that tactical piece of that spend. So this sort of addresses what the internal structure should look like. What about the external partnerships if you do want to go down that path? And here again, this 2x2 matrix sort of tries to guide the CPOs on what to look for when they are looking for doing external partnerships. So on the strategic sourcing front, again, it is clear everyone understands the need to partner. Strategic sourcing across both high touch and low touch. There is a clear business case for partnering with outside companies from time to time to bring the right industry knowledge, bring the right resources and processes and benchmarks, and that rigor to make tough decisions on suppliers if necessary without any bias creeping in their decision-making process. It's mostly a partnership kind of where, at least for the high-touch categories, you do have your internal subject matter experts and internal people who have full control over that spend, but just to get the right industry information and just to get the right benchmarking, it is useful to get help from external partners who have good service offering in that space. For low-touch categories, as we had shown on the earlier slide, there is no strong business case for maintaining internal resources. So you just partner with an external company who can provide that sort of benefit of strategic sourcing, just doing it over a period of time so that you ensure that you're getting the best rates and best pricing available out there in the market and working with the right suppliers. So on the low-touch spend areas, the number of stakeholders involved are relatively small, and what we have seen is a lot of companies are open and eager to get most of the legwork for the strategic sourcing, like creating RFP documents, detailed analysis, supplier outreach, supplier communication, just communicating with them about the deadlines and doing the Q&A with them. So that sort of legwork that's required for any strategic sourcing kind of projects, a lot of companies have been open to doing it from offshore to keep the costs low. On the category and transactions management, again, as I said earlier, which happens to be more tactical than strategic, the leading-edge companies are reaching out to seek external partner help as well. Maintaining internal expertise and resource pool in this area is extremely challenging, and the companies have not had too much success with compliance and contract management. So typical industry average is 40 to 50%, at least for the low-touch categories or the non-strategic spend areas. For the high-touch spend, it does make sense to keep some internal expertise and on-site resources because of the sensitivities involved, because of the multiples of stakeholders involved. But the CPOs want to get best-in-class services that keep pace with market trends and are preferring to outsource such functions. And for the low-touch categories where, again, sensitivities are not that high, and the on-site requirement is not as stringent because we're not dealing with too many stakeholders and the change management activities should be minimal. Companies are achieving significant benefits by using partners that can perform the tactical work from their offshore locations But again, just keeping some presence on site, just to build those relationships, just to fight out any fires if that happens, but happens typically very less on the low-touch categories than the high-touch categories. So the 50-50 split for the high-touch categories in terms of on-site versus offshore split, and 90-10. And again, it depends on the comfort level of different companies and the different procurement organizations. But overall, just understanding that there are significant benefits to be had from doing the category and transactions management offshore. So this framework, the internal expertise and the external partnerships framework are pretty simple, and it very clearly helps most of the procurement organizations can understand what the best-in-class companies are doing out there. And again, this is not hard and fast rule. Every company has their own set of parameters, their own comfort level in terms of partnering with external organizations, in terms of on-site versus offshore presence. But this serves as a very good guideline on what to expect and what can bring the maximum benefits to an organization. So in terms of once the company has agreed and decided that external partnerships do make sense, it is very crucial for companies to invest a lot of time in choosing the right partner, because it's not a one-way street. It's not that I give it to you, you take it over and run with it. It should be considered more of a partnership where both companies develop the mutual comfort level, and just the process of selecting the right partner just varies. It has multiple parameters built into it, and again, varies from company to company, but these are some of the key insights that everyone should be looking at when selecting the partner for themselves. The first one being deep category expertise. And again, it's one of the topmost priorities, is companies expect their partner to bring in that deep subject matter knowledge to provide them the best value. One of the reasons for sort of outsourcing or working with an external partner for the low-touch spend areas or the high-touch spend areas is to get that industry knowledge, get that industry best practices and the benchmarking that the external providers can bring working with multiple clients in the same space. So that's obviously, the deep category expertise is obviously one of the topmost priorities that the company should look at. And the second piece that I've highlighted here is the strong market intelligence service offering. This does tie in with the first piece, that you have to have that category expertise, but the first piece is more indicative of the past experience, what you have done in the past, what you have collected from the suppliers and your other clients in the past. But this strong market intelligence service offering ensures that the future work and decisions will be based on the emerging market trends and not past parameters. And a lot of companies are investing heavily into this, the external procurement service provider companies who do understand the need and importance of this. And this is how we sort of, a lot of companies are differentiating themselves from internal procurement organizations where it's not a static market where you did something a few years ago with another client or another company and you bring in that knowledge and build upon it at the present company, but just doing an extensive supplier market research, doing an extensive, just providing sort of those forecasts, working with the key suppliers, working with multiple clients in the same space and providing that offering. The third important point definitely would be the on-site presence. And again, as I had shown in the matrix earlier, the high touch and low touch spend, it is more crucial for the high touch spend areas where you need that relationship building, where you need that change management expertise, and having that on-site presence is imperative for making the program successful. And just making sure that they have the right team and size that can be staffed with right resources to address the key issues that can crop up during any program of such nature. The fourth point on this list is the strong offshore presence. And why not? In this day and age of labor arbitrage savings, a lot of companies have gained tremendously using resources in low-cost countries to do most of the tactical work. And so it's absolutely imperative for your partner to have that strong offshore network. And in this procurement world, again, things are not as cut and dry as, let's say, F&A outsourcing, where you're doing the transactions day in and day out. So it's important to understand that, yes, low-level tactical resources are important for that partner to have in an offshore location, but they should also have the capacity to work through strategic issues and provide key inputs and insights on tricky situations. So just having that strong consulting sort of a framework, even in offshore locations, is very important for companies to manage. Effective procurement technology is the next point. And again, no procurement journey is complete without an effective procurement technology in place. It helps in so many different ways. It streamlines the entire procurement process, makes the world a seamless place where everyone has access to the same set of data and rules. It makes the life of the buyers, it makes the life of the suppliers, it makes the life of the CPO and the CFO so much easier, because everyone is working on the same set of data, and everyone has that streamlined processes in place where you are not just relying on manual either Excel sheets or Word documents. So procurement technology in the sense of ERFX, e-auctions, supplier relationship management, contract management, P2P. So a lot of those are very crucial, and it's very important when you're selecting your partner to understand what kind of technology offering they have in place, what kind of partnerships they have in place if they have nothing to offer in-house, and how would that integrate with your current technology and your IT systems. And the last piece here is just the nimble and proactiveness of your external partner, and it's especially important in offshore locations where the team size can vary from, let's say, 10 people to 100 people or 200 people. And as we are all aware, there are lots of spurts, lots of ups and downs in terms of workloads, in terms of fighting fires and so on in the strategic sourcing or the category management aspect of the procurement processes. And in that sense, your partner should be proactively looking at load balancing. A lot of times we work with our clients where they say, our logistics group has 10 people, our IT group has 15 people, our marketing has 5 people, so let's create those 3 buckets in your domain and have those 25, 30 people working in specific areas. Most of the times it works, but again, it doesn't address the load balancing effect. There may be certain periods when the logistics group has extra workload and the marketing team is doing 4 hours a day kind of a work. So how your external partner works on that load balancing factor, making sure that's one cohesive team where the expertise and the knowledge is transferred between various team members regardless of which group they belong in. And in that sense, so instead of having those 30 people working in 3 different groups, maybe just have 20 people working as a cohesive team and managing those peaks and troughs and managing your costs through better utilization of the resources and no overcharges in terms of overrate charges just for extra work in that logistics group once a year. Sort of this brings me to the last point of today's discussion. If you have decided to go with an external partner for your high spend or for your high touch or your low touch areas, for strategic sourcing or your category management, it's very crucial to always treat that external partner as an extension of your current procurement organization. This will bring them the credibility they will need and will help them make the right decisions for your company with the help of your key stakeholders. A lot of times there are key change management issues involved. A lot of times there are personnel-related issues involved. So the better partnership you have, the closer the partnership that you have with your external partner, the easier it will be for both the companies down the road. And if possible, just providing your partner access to the C-level in your company to prove, not just to your partner, but to prove to all the key stakeholders and all the key employees in your company that it is truly a long-term journey both companies have taken together to make your company the best-in-class procurement organization. And that will be all from my side. I will now open it up for questions.
If you would like to ask a question today, you can go to our chat panel, simply type in your question, choose Send to Presenter, and click the Send button to have your question in queue.
So one of the questions is that would you receive the presentation material? And the answer to that I believe is yes, there will be a way for you to download this presentation. I believe it will be uploaded on our Globally Procure website. There's one more question on how do we combine the strategic sourcing and the transactions management if we are going with an external partner, because strategic sourcing activities are sort of mostly one-off activities, while category transactions management is an ongoing activity. And it's a very good question in the sense that, and again, this is something that you will need to work out with your partners in terms of the load balancing and the workload. What we have typically seen is if these two programs are combined together, the strategic sourcing and the category management, then what can typically be done is front-loading the number of resources with high-end consultants who can go and deliver that strong value from strategic sourcing activities. And then once the right contracts are in place, once the right T's and C's and the SLAs are in place, hand it over to the category management team who will manage your contracts, who will monitor the contracts, who will monitor the supply performance. But you can do all of these activities with fewer number of resources than you currently use, and this is only because of the strong the front loading of the strategic sourcing resources, where they came in and put the right structure and the right format in place that would make the life of the sort of the category managers much easier, because all the data is readily available, all the contracts are rightly structured, and hopefully you have partnered with the right suppliers who will not make it too cumbersome for you down the road. And the procurement technology obviously helps make the life of your category managers easier as well, just because all the prices are in one place, the contracts are in one place, the supplier contact information, everything is in one place. And so at an overall level, let's say if you had 30 resources to manage that spend, just load it up front, maybe bring in 35 resources to do the strategic sourcing and in parallel do the category management. But after 6 months, when the strategic sourcing activities are done, you can probably go down to 20 or fewer resources to manage that spend, which was currently being managed by 30 resources. And so the strategic sourcing consultants will come in and go out, and they can come back in another 2 to 3 years when the sort of the resourcing calendar is up again. Any further questions from anyone? I don't see anything else in my chat window, so I will. We can wrap up this discussion, this presentation today. And again, as I had mentioned, I believe this presentation would be available to download from our website.
Abhishek, it looks like you do have a couple of more questions coming through to you right now.
Okay. So there's a question on how do you get compliance. Procurement is often engaged too late, and we often find that our internal customers have sole sourced. This eliminates opportunities. Should we focus on category versus transactional savings? And a very good question again. Procurement being involved too late in the game is a crucial issue, and that's where the role of the entire C-level needs to they need to step up to the plate and say, well, procurement is delivering us savings. And that's why the approach that we have started taking with our clients is whatever a savings target is, just translate that into EPS, or translate that into what kind of revenues would the company need to increase to get those same sort of profits. It's probably a 1:10 ratio. So if you're saving $6 million or $60 million, then you need to increase your revenues by $600 million to get the same benefits. So to address the first question, yes, if procurement is coming in too late into the game where the contracts have already been signed or it is single source, then it does create an issue. But for the compliance piece, again, the compliance, when I speak about compliance, is from the procurement perspective, not the finance perspective, not the Sarbanes-Oxley. From procurement perspective, it's the sort of the buyer compliance that they are going out to the right suppliers. From the supplier compliance, that they are sending the right material and the right cost. So just monitoring that to make sure that whatever was contracted, the suppliers are adhering to it, and making sure that there is no maverick buying as such going on. And the third sort of the piece was category versus transactional savings. And again, companies have achieved a lot of savings from just the transactional piece as well, just putting the right technology in place, just using the right kind of a resource mix. There are tremendous opportunities to have those savings from the transactional piece too. Aberdeen, I believe, recently published a report where they said your typical transaction cost could be as high as $45 per transaction and can be brought down into single digits. So just a focus on that as well would definitely help. I believe I do see another question. So just giving an example on how GEP has helped a non-strategic client. And that's a very good point again. Not all companies we have worked with have gone down that procurement transformation journey where they started looking at their high-touch, low-spend areas, high-touch and low-touch spend areas, and choosing the right partner for the journey, which is a longer-term journey over the next 3-4 years. We do go in and help our clients with their one-off requests, be it on the strategic sourcing front or be it on the category management where we are just picking up on 1 or 2 or 3 categories where they do not have enough resources or the right structure in place, and we go in and help our clients work with that. No more questions, and thank you everyone for your time. Hope the discussion and the presentation today was helpful, and feel free to reach out to us in case of any other questions.
Thank you for all of your questions, and thank you again for joining us. Feel free to visit the Global Epicure website for additional procurement resources. This concludes our program. You may now disconnect.